Hello and welcome to Psyched, the show where we explore psychedelics through social, economic, and political perspectives.
Next up, we have Alex Speiser. He is the COO of Orthogonal Thinker, a plant medicine platform dedicated to individual and collective well-being via psychoactive compounds and clean label products. Speiser is an early-stage startup investor with a track record of successful ventures and strategic roles, including VP of Business Development of G.S. Power Partners. He received a bachelor's with honors in the College of Social Studies and the College of Environment from Wesleyan University. Alex, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to
Aloha, brother. Good to be here. I'm excited. Well, thanks, Merrick. So yeah, my name is Alex Speiser. I'm the COO of Orthogonal Thinker. Thank you for tuning in. I'm super excited to spend the next 20 to 25 minutes with you. Before starting, I want to give a shout out to Marique and the Psyched 2020 team. This has been such a tremendous event. You know, it's as always, the real story here is that there's enough interest that we could have an event of this magnitude based on the common vision of how transformational psychedelics can be. It's just super inspiring. I'm going to stick to just me on camera. I want to avoid technical errors. And I'm also going to be reading off of an essay that I've written, which is kind of a script. The scenery is also pretty good. And yeah, so let me just kick into it. I like to title this talk, A Manifesto on Orthogonal, and a few musings on orthogonally thinking about impact. I think this will be actually particularly relevant after the back and forth that just went down between Marique and Matt Johnson. So I've had to explain the meaning of orthogonal and the concept of orthogonal thinker a few too many times to friends and family. My father-in-law still mispronounces orthogonal as orthogonal. So, you know, I of course love him and I've never corrected him yet, but it's safe to say that if the people closest to me have questions, others familiar with orthogonal thinker or not may be similarly unsure about the meaning of orthogonal and what the company is all about. So first of all, what does orthogonal mean? Most formal definitions from organizations like Merriam-Webster usually relate to the Greek orthogonos, meaning right-angled. The definition I like the most is orthogonal means to draw on ideas from many spheres, spurring innovation and unexpected solutions. To draw on ideas from many spheres, spurring innovation and unexpected solutions. Another good definition that I heard was on the Tim Ferriss podcast with Naval Ravikant, where Naval said, orthogonal means it kind of comes out of left field. It doesn't line up with your normal way of thinking. He also added, it's actually a geometric term where something can be running at a different axis. So almost a year ago, when I first spoke to David Nixad, Orthogonal Thinker's founder, and discussed his vision of psychedelics, my mind was beyond blown. He had a vision and knowledge that were far deeper than anyone I'd ever spoken to about the potential of psychedelics. I thought I had done my homework on the subject, but after talking to him, I would say he had a PhD in psychedelics, and I had barely made it out of high school. My friend Gopal and I were so inspired that we booked a flight to meet David in Hawaii 3 days later. Yet once the flight was booked and I began doing further homework in preparation for meeting David, the business model of orthogonal kept rattling around my head like a basketball bouncing around a rim. Why would a psychedelic company be a part of a wellness platform? What's a wellness platform anyway? And why did David keep talking about Berkshire Hathaway and psychedelics at the same time? What I came to understand was that David and Jason Hobson's vision of wellness was a paradigm shift. This is, of course, wellness beyond yoga pants. Their conception of wellness relates to a world in which cutting-edge tools empower an individual's quality of life. These tools are what we call empowerment products. Now, bear with me for just 1 second. Let me just give the elevator pitch of Orthogonal Thinker. Orthogonal is structured as a holding company with the thrust of our focus going towards plant medicine. Each of our core assets strive to rewrite the rules of old industries, from our psychedelic science business, EI Ventures, emotional intelligence ventures, to our forthcoming clinical research organization, to our brands. Our mission is to give people access to nature's most effective health solutions while setting new standards for transparency and quality. We like to say that EI Ventures is the crown jewel of Orthogonal, especially because the majority of our focus these days, like I said, is related to EI Ventures. The plan for EI Ventures is pretty straightforward. It's to bring nutraceuticals and psychedelic compounds to medicinal markets. We're building a vertically integrated platform that includes a psychoactive compound library, critical global infrastructure, vis-a-vis contract research organizations and entities like the EI Foundation. In short, we're turning a wide range of unorthodox ideas, some new, some traditional, and some ancient, into an accessible toolkit for modern health. Just like EI, each orthogonal portfolio company is making a big impact. Collectively, the portfolio is striving to empower a new way of being. So we're about to be embarking on a fundraise over the next few weeks for EI Ventures. There are a number of factors that I believe make EI second to none in the psychedelic space, whether it be our psychedelic portfolio or our infrastructure. But I don't want to take this time to delve into the nuts and bolts of a fundraise pitch, but rather dig into a more orthogonal topic, if you will. And in this case, I mean to draw on ideas from many spheres, spurring innovations and unexpected solutions. We are in a transformational moment. So many institutions seem to be collapsing in front of our eyes. The moment is inspiring, chaotic, and when it comes to psychedelics, very concerning for some. Over the last few months as COO of Orthogonal, I have had many conversations and many dark nights of the soul questioning, can business be a force for good in the psychedelic sector? Should the space be dominated by grassroots or nonprofit organizations? Are businesses exploiting the experiences of activists and organizations as they develop a plan for the marketplace? We're being given the opportunity to design all the pieces of the so-called psychedelic industry from the ground up. And if plant medicine has taught me anything, you have to be open. And in this case, I have to be open to admitting that as a businessman, I may be part of the problem. At the same time, I feel a tremendous sense of a calling to this work, and I want to the best of my abilities, infuse the spirit of these medicines and put it into action for the benefit of as many people as possible. I believe I'm coming to this space as a psychonaut first and a businessman second. Throughout my life, I've been called to plant medicine, called to their history and their science. Most profoundly was several years ago into meditating every day. I wanted to find a game-changing tool that was as profound as meditating and began exploring the intentional uses of psychedelics like microdosing. I read every book I could on the subject, reached out to anyone I could. Then when I began studying the emergence of psychedelic businesses, I felt a similarly deep sense of a calling. All these sensations of callings were physical, truly like a propulsion. And the more I learned about the entrepreneurs and businesses emerging, the more I felt drawn to Orthogonal. The more I felt pulled to Hawaii, and the more I fell in love with how any of the medicines EI develops start from the whole plants. I fell in love with how strong EI's commitment is to act as stewards for the healing of the uses of plants in symbiosis with the environment. Yet I remain very, very cautiously hopeful. And I continually hear Stanislav Grof's proclamation when asked about how people should approach this new renaissance of psychedelic medicine and interest. Don't fuck it up. Don't fuck it up. I hear you, Stan. I do. I also fundamentally believe that leaving forces for good exclusively in the hands of nonprofits and philanthropy doesn't transform the social and economic relationships of a market-driven economy. However, building companies that are committed to doing things differently and doing things better can. Impact-aligned companies powerfully demonstrate the positive impact businesses can have on our communities, economies, and environment simultaneously. At the same time, I can't help but focus on everything that can go wrong with business, the ills of neoliberal capitalism. I have deep concerns about the injustices embedded in our economic system and insecurities about if I'm an ally when it comes to addressing systems of oppression. But at the end of this tunnel, I still see a light. I can imagine beyond those fears. What if the psychedelic industry does it right? What if the industry committed itself to creating pathways for local ownership? What if it ensured that there were living wage jobs? What if it committed to relying on supply chains that were ethical and environmentally friendly? What if diversity in leadership was a priority? What if the winners of this next gold rush included many, if not all, of the communities that have been adversely affected by the drug war? It's within these questions and the grapplings that accompany them that I believe we will arrive closer and closer to the right answers. Of course, we have our work cut out for us, and mistakes will be made due to our blind spots, foibles, and freaking neoliberal capitalism. But I do believe that this means that I do not believe that this means that we should leave business and venture capital out of the conversation. Rather, we need to create environments for deep dialogue around the social and environmental implications of the commercialization of plant medicine, and think orthogonally about how we can create paths forward where we account for our blind spots and align our behavior, our business models and practices, and our movements with our visions of justice, liberation, and transformation. It's going to be a big lift, and luckily we are not alone. My thinking around equity and access in startups is inspired by Dr. Ashley Lukens, who has joined the Orthogonal team as Chief Impact Officer of our foundation, the EI Foundation. She has over 20 years of community activism, organizing, and impact consulting as a nonprofit director, scholar, small business owner, impact advisor, and now Chief Impact Officer. And luckily, she is not alone, but rather inspired by incredible organizations and individuals like Zebras United. She's learning a lot from thinkers like Sarah Chandler at Elemental Accelerator, who is helping to develop equity and access frameworks for decision-making within startups that are working within energy, transportation, and food sectors. To think orthogonally means to turn a wide range of unorthodox ideas, some new, some traditional, and some ancient, into tangible solutions. We want a psychedelic sector with equity and access at the forefront, and thus must honor theories of change that allow for multiple movers pursuing parallel pathways. Emergent strategy offers a way for us to understand the change-making process as one that prevents one sector, one actor, one organization, or one theory of change to dominate how we move forward. Business can and will be a force for good within the psychedelic sector, and EI Ventures will be a leading option. So how do businesses, especially large multinational businesses, adopt internal and external policies to be forces for good? Thanks to a variety of thought partners like Ashley, one conclusion that I've arrived at within EI and Orthogonal is the EI Foundation, which I keep alluding to, obviously. When formulating the organization for EI Foundation, I was happy to learn that the organization was filed for and formed on the same day EI Ventures was. So this has always been an aspect of Orthogonal Thinkers' intentions and is now being realized by Ashley. EI Foundation represents the impact arm of EI Ventures, and thus it is the beating heart and roots of EI Ventures. It reflects our deep and authentic commitment to the communities who have held the sacred healing of plants in their food and health systems, helping them to survive the recent and intense criminalization. Today, this movement guides the reemergence of plant medicine into the cultural commons as new, with a K, healing modalities that are important and impactful that are more impactful and effective than their pharmaceutical counterparts. So what will EI Foundation's impact look like in concrete terms? We imagine a vibrant mycelial network of resource individuals and organizations collectively fighting for safe legal access to plant medicines. Right now, we are listening and learning. We've heard a lot from voices in the movement. Some insights and offerings that resonate are, folks have been at this work for decades, if not generations. They're concerned about the current trends in commercialization. Fundraising for this work is scary and/or intimidating, and so is navigating the policy process. In response, what feels most important to say to this movement and to you is, we hear you. There is not one perfect path forward, but an abundance of futures, of ways to manage resources together to be transformational together. When the time is right, we'll know our best step. Please email me at alex@orthogonalthinker.com if you want to continue this conversation. In this spirit, I want to give a shout out to an event EI Foundation and Ashley are hosting, Women in the Future of Psychedelics. I'll put the link as well in the chat. And cool. The event's going to be free. Ashley, it's on the 20th, so on Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. It's free. Ashley will be structuring it as a learning circle. Sherelle Noble of the Oren Project and North Star Community, Shireen Jaffer, who is the CEO of Edfo and an investor at Pay It Forward, along with Tawny, who is an amazing writer, multimedia artist, along with the founder of High Wildflower, are all participating. Let's move forward together orthogonally and with emotional intelligence. Thank you.
Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Really beautiful message, and super excited for your work and also this event coming up. I'll make sure to be there too.
Thanks.
The first question from the audience is, what specifically is Orthogonal doing to ensure fair, equitable, and regenerative practices when sourcing medicines, funding ventures, or developing a corporate structure? What reporting do you provide to the public?
So this is obviously a really complicated question because we can't bring medicines to market quite yet. But our intention really is to have a variety of different resources along our supply chain that will provide full transparency. Things like track and trace. We want to be as transparent as we can be about reimbursement models, but this is all sort of, to be determined. And so I think part of what's going to keep us honest in the process is going to be the work of the EI Foundation, allowing us to, mobilize campaigns and to work with activists on the ground. And I think in a way, for me, I'm really confident that this will keep us as high of integrity and honest as possible. But while we can't commit to exactly how we're going to do it quite yet, I think, the notion of committing is a great first step.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is, the single most dangerous thing to the success of a healthy psychedelic ecosystem? Is it, moving too fast? Is it too much capital pouring in? Is it a lack of communication on both sides? What are some perspectives for that?
I mean, I hate to generalize about the industry as a whole, but from my standing, I think it's a lack of transparency. I think people need to be transparent about their motivations. I think they need to be transparent about their business practices and business models. I kind of shudder when I say we can't talk about our reimbursement strategy. I mean, we just can't yet. It's likely 5 years away. But we ought to be as transparent as we can be, because there should not be ludicrous, reimbursement functions as there has been in the the pharmaceutical industry and stuff like that. So I think a lack of transparency, and I think a notion of business as usual. I think that this is a completely transformational space. I think we should all be thinking psychedelically about the psychedelic industry, and so yeah, those are my biggest concerns.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to be, I guess, the most surprising thing that comes out of this transformation over the next 10 years? What's something that, we have all these conversations, conferences like this, projecting what the future might hold. What do you think, might kind of come out of left field and be something that we didn't even expect to result, either good or bad?
Well, I think, when I appear on a panel like this or on a webinar like this, I'm beyond idealistic. I'm so hopeful, but at the same time, like, the work that has to get done, like, we're dealing with such immense, troubling healing. We're dealing with the scale of the afflictions we're dealing with and we're trying to take on are so profound and so deep that it's going to be a tremendously messy and harrowing process. But I think if we're up to that task, I think this will be a very transformative space. But I think the sheer scale of healing that needs to go on is incomprehensible, and
Mm-hmm.
That to me is going to be the most surprising, because it's going to lead to this kind of meandering road that I don't think anyone can really anticipate quite yet. And needless to say, we have to scale so many other systems, like the therapists that are qualified at administering this and so on.
Mm-hmm. Another audience question is, When you're collecting investments, how are you establishing a baseline for your impact? So how are you measuring social return on an investment?
So again, this is very hard to quantify because we're not currently making investments. So it would be establishing metrics that are able to establish our social impact. And I don't think we quite know how to measure that stuff yet. I think we're going to be able to measure it over time. I think part of what we're seeking with the EI Foundation is to bring voices to the table that will allow us to capture that sort of data. But when we're fundraising, I think it's just really the intent of impact that's resonating most right now. And the fact that our main investors are a group that are very diverse. There's several people of color, several women involved. You know, they're totally values aligned. And I think at the same time, you know, if anyone's met David, who's the founder of Orthogonal, he frankly is a litmus test in himself. I'm a litmus test in myself, in that there's only certain investors that are willing to kind of invest in Orthogonal, and that in itself has created a pretty diverse and unique and healthy cap table.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You know, what are some of when you're talking to your investors, what are some of the points that, you know, you really feel that connection, that resonance, you know, when an investor says, yeah, like that's exactly what we're looking for. What is it that's happening in the conversation?
I think a lot of it has to do with the IP portfolio in itself. The fact that everything we do starts with the whole plant, that we really are trying to establish the most clean label standards and not have any fillers or glues in it. And that, you know, we're very adverse to a solely synthetic approach. And at the same time, we want to make sure that the supply chain is as ethical as possible. And so when we're talking to investors, you know, people that have had breakthroughs with psychedelics or that are very, you know, interested in wellness, the fact that we are botanically based is a really big selling point.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Beautiful. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to more conversations soon. And to the folks listening, please make sure to check out the event that Alex posted. I'm sure that it'll be incredible and excited to see folks there.
Definitely. And just to Rebecca's question, I'll make sure that we incorporate that to some degree in the event. And Merrick, you know, this is some event, man. Congratulations. I'm really
Thanks, yo. 10
impressed.
days, you know, a
It's
little
been,
crazy, but it's all Maya Albert. You know, if anyone wants to work with the best conference organizer you'll ever meet, Maya Albert, look her up. She's on the Tabula Rasa team, just truly incredible.
that's
So
great. Well, shout out to Maya and congrats, man. And we'll talk soon. It's always so good seeing your face and talking.
you as well, man. Be well.
Later, man. Thanks.